Okay, we now go to Don Lydon's testimony at the Flood Tribunal, and we're going to go through extracts from his testimony on Tuesday, Wednesday and today. And we start with his part of his evidence on Tuesday when he was questioned about how he funded his election campaign expenses. These were elections to the Dublin County Council, I think it was at the time, initially anyway, and to the Senate. And in this extract, counsel for the tribunal, John Gallagher, begins by asking Don Lydon whether the elections were expensive to fund.
You've no idea. It's very expensive. You see, one of the things I do, I print a lot of literature and send it out. And we're in the country for 5 weeks. We always canvassed in pairs, my wife and I. She goes off one direction and I go off the other. It's very expensive.
Did it mean that you had to take time off work?
I take all my holidays anytime there's an election. I don't have any holidays for about 18 months or so. If there was an election, we say, next year, I would have no holidays next year. I wouldn't have been on holidays again until 2005.
I can give you the dates of the election. The local government elections that were held in 1985, 1991, 1994, that is borough, corporation and town commissioners. They were not county council elections.
Not 94 or 99.
Shannon elections were held in 1987, 89, 1992 and 1997.
And another one after that.
Yes.
Yes.
Did you get a lot of financial help from the party organisation? From the headquarters, for example?
I'm sorry. I was going to say you're cutting me. Not at all. No.
Did that mean that you had to fund it out of your own resources?
In the local elections, for example, there would have been some leaflets printed by the local organisation, but generally a fund from yourself, yeah. And the Shannon election would be totally out of your own resources.
I take it that you would have to provide food and drink to those canvassers who were working for you at a local election?
At local elections, yes. That runs into quite a lot of money because you canvass in the morning. Naturally, you buy them lunch. They don't demand or ask for it, but you do it out of decency. In the evening after, people will be given tea, and some of them might join you for tea in the evening time. And then there will be drinks, sandwiches or cocktails, sausages, things like that.
You told the tribunal about one fundraising event. Did you organise any other fundraising event?
No, I didn't ever.
How did you finance the other 7 elections that you told us about?
I was very fortunate. People gave me a lot of money. They gave me, donations. I have a few very good friends who gave me donations, and other people gave me donations as well.
Can you tell the tribunal the size of donations you would have received, or the approximate amount of donations you would have received for, say, the 1987 Shannon election?
I have no idea in God's earth about that. I can tell you the biggest election I got, the biggest donation was for in 1992. I got 5,000 from one man and 5,000 from another.
I see. How much in total did you receive in 1992? Approximately.
How much did I receive altogether?
Yes.
Oh, I'd say I received well over about 14,000 or 15,000, I'd say.
Was that an exceptional election, or was that the norm?
It was because of the 2 5,000 checks. It was very exceptional, and it was very fortunate.
What would be the average spend for an election? Perhaps, before you said that there was a difference, or a significant difference, between what you would spend on a Shannon election as distinct from a local election?
Yes. Local election would run you from 6 or 7 or 5,000. It would depend on what you get. I would spend every penny I would get, naturally. For a Senate election, it would never cost you less than 10. I know the last Senate election cost me, just running the election alone, cost me £13,500, I think.
I just don't quite understand how it came to pass that supporters and others give you contributions towards your election expenses without being asked for such contributions.
Well, if I tell you, you may not believe me. But for example, for the last Senate election, I was out in a pub one night in, I think it was Clonee or something, in Blanchardstown. And I got to talking to this fella, and I don't know his name. This is the truth. We were talking about sailing because I like sailing. And when the Senate election came in, I got a cheque from a company. And only long after I discovered that he owned the company. I can't remember his name. I'm sure I could read it out for you. Another time I was canvassing on Merriam,
for example. How much was that cheque?
500 or something. It was under the limit. There was a 500 limit, I think. Whatever it was under the limit. You had to open an account since that time. And I have an account in the Bank of Ireland, Blackrock. And I discovered these documents in the tribunal. And you will find that cheque there. I mean, I was canvassing in Mount Merriam one day. And I knocked on the door, and there was no big rush, and this is for the local elections. And a man came out with a towel around him, and he said, hold on. I thought he was going to give out to me. He was obviously having a shower. I waited and waited, and he handed me a cheque for £100. He said, you're all right. You get every vote in this house. I mean, people just give you money at election time, particularly Fianna Fáil supporters. There's, since, as I said before, since the tribunal started, people are reluctant to give you money because they're afraid their names will be mentioned here. That's why I got so little in, I got very few donations for the last Senate election. I might still have a fundraiser for that.
In this, excuse me, in this next extract, counsel for the tribunal, John Gallagher, probes the origins of Don Lydon's relationship with Frank Dunlop and also examines the thorny question on whether or not the parties operated a whip system of voting at the county council.
Tell me, in your career as a politician, I take it that you came in contact with Frank Dunlop.
I did, yeah.
Would you tell the tribunal in what circumstances you came in touch with Mr. Dunlop?
Well, I knew him from knocking about for years. I mean, he was, I know he was government press secretary, but he's not a man I would know intimately or would be a friend of his. But I knew him.
Would you meet him on a regular basis in the Dáil?
No.
The Shannon?
No. The only place I ever met him on a regular basis was in Dublin County Council, because he was always tipping around there, you know.
How often would you see him around Dublin County Council?
At the time of the development plan, he would be there all the time. This is my recollection. I'm not saying he was. This is my perception. He was always there. He used to stand outside the council chamber. I think he had a folder like that. He had a list of all the councillors, and he would say, go in and vote for...
He would say?
Go in and vote for that. He was always ticking off the names as we went in.
You mean he was encouraging or asking or telling councillors to vote for a particular motion? Is that what you're saying?
I would say telling more than asking.
Telling more than asking?
He had a sort of, I won't say overbearing. He was a little pompous, perhaps.
Are you saying that he was telling rather than asking you?
Sort of. He would say, go in and vote for that. That's what he would say. Lots of the councillors heard it. I often spoke to people about this. You didn't have to go in. I mean, that's what he often did. I mean, he seemed to be interested in all sorts of different developments, and he would be encouraging you to go in and vote for them.
In other words, he was lobbying for various developments?
Yes.
You knew that?
That's what I thought he was doing, yeah.
Did every other councillor know that? Was it obvious to them?
Of course they knew it. Well, I can't say they knew it. I'm saying I assume they knew it. I'm nearly certain.
They should have known it.
He wasn't there for the good of his health.
You were an intelligent man. You were there and you knew what he was doing.
Yes.
You knew he was saying to you and others, go in and vote for that.
Yes.
Did you vote for any of those proposals that he asked you to vote for?
Again, I honest to God don't know. One of the things he was mentioning, it was a big development. You probably know the one I'm talking about. The big one out between Badgerstown and Tala. I voted for that, I think. I thought at first I didn't. I think it was 2 votes. I wasn't there for the first day or didn't vote for them. I might have been at the Senate or somewhere. But I voted for the second man. I was asked a number of times, did he ever lobby me about that? To be honest, I don't think he ever did. If he did, he said, would you vote for it? And I'd say yes. It wouldn't be a big sit-down job of an hour to try and convince me, you know.
What would your reaction be to an instruction from Mr. Dunlop to go and vote for a particular proposal?
It would be very much the same as anybody else. You see, councillors made up their own minds always. They might have pretended. I mean, Mr. Gallagher, you were the law officer. You were often around the council as well, and you know what it was like. It was chaotic. And there are people there go in and vote for that, and somebody else would be saying, don't vote for that. I remember scenes in the hall. There were residents' groups pushing and shoving you. You would run out to the room, out to the chamber, praying you wouldn't see anybody you knew, and try to get into the chamber and do the best you could.
What would your frame of mind be in relation to such motions at the time that you had been, generally speaking?
It would make no difference in God's earth. Who asked me to do what, really? Unless we agreed about it. I mean, we used to meet in a room before, and we still meet in a room beforehand. We used to meet in Conway's upstairs. Nowadays we meet in a place called Lep Inn. I don't always get there because I'm down the country. We used to meet before the meetings, and Fianna Fáil would adopt a position, and, you know, if, for example, somebody came in looking for something, some zoning or whatever it was, it would be discussed at the meeting, and you would reach a decision. Can we support this or can we not? You didn't have to support it. Nobody ever said, there's no sanction. I heard people saying, there's a whip. There was no actual whip as far as I was concerned. You could do what you liked. Frequently, people did. There was consensus opinion on it. That's what I know rather than anybody else.
And can you offer any explanation to the tribunal as to why Mr. Dunlop would select you?
He didn't select me. He sent to other people as well.
Insofar as he selected you, he appears to have written a cheque to someone who he knew to say hello to, who had never had a meal, never a cup of coffee or a drink with. Can you explain to the tribunal why Mr. Dunlop should have felt the need to?
Of course I can explain it. You see, lobbyists, as I would see it, the job of lobbyists, or any of these fellows, is to keep councillors happy. To keep them happy, as far as I see it, you send money to them at election times. He sent not just to me, I don't want to name other councillors, but to John Hannon, Tony, I don't know. No, he didn't send to Tony Fox, to Anne Ormond, to, can't remember the people that were mentioned. But he just did that.
How do you know he sent money to those people?
Pardon?
How do you know he sent money to those people?
They said it in the Fianna Fáil report, and they told me anyway.
I see.
I don't see anything peculiar about it. People send you money for election time.
Would you elaborate on what you mean by it is the job of lobbyists to keep councillors happy?
That's what they imagine their job is, I would say.
And how do they keep councillors happy?
Buy them meals, drinks, take them to dinner, send them money at election time. That happened.
Send them money at, not necessarily at election time?
No, usually at election time, I would say.
Yes.
You can send them money anytime.
Why should he keep them happy?
Because he would want them to vote for things. You see, most of these fellas, like lobbyists and developers and all these things, if I walked into the Burlington this evening and there was a developer there, he would buy me a drink. He's thinking in the back of his mind, someday I want this fella to vote for me. If he likes me, he might vote. They never realise I vote the way I want to always. I made my own decisions.
If you know that is his motive in buying you a drink, why do you not say, no, I don't want a drink from you, thank you very much. You understand I have a duty.
I'm assuming that's his reason for doing it. I mean,
do you not think it might lead that person to believe you accepting the drink with the intention of, in fact...
Not at all. No.
You don't think so?
Not at all, no. Sure, I mean, you take any function run by any party. It's people by developers and builders and all these people. They go along and throw big money into all the various parties. Some give to Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Labour, the whole lot together. They do that hoping to stay in with the parties.
Do you think they do it for altruistic purposes?
They do it in their... they do it in the hope if they need something from the parties, there will be more forthcoming. That's the way the system works. You know that as well as I do. The same as a senator walking into a conference and buying drink for councillors. The same thing.
Do you think it is not that... Do you think that it is not open to...
It could be open to the abuse.
To abuse in the first instance?
Yeah.
Do you not think it might have been more prudent to write to Mr. Dunlop and say, thank you very much for your generosity, I am glad you thought of me, but I am concerned that there might be a perception that if I took this money for election purposes, that there might be a feeling or a belief abroad that you had effectively bought my vote?
I understand. It never occurred to me, and I don't mean this in any cheeky way, but you obviously never went for election. But when election starts, you just try to get some funds from somewhere to run the election and pay for the printing and running around and everything that has to be done. I wouldn't care if I got a cheque from the Orange Order. I would take it and say thank you.
Sorry? You wouldn't care if you got a cheque from?
The Orange Order, I just said that. I wouldn't care where it came from.
Does getting elected mean that much to you?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to be a senator since I was a child.
So whatever the perception, whatever the source of the money, you were prepared to take it, provided it would assist you to get re-elected.
If it came from maybe, I don't know, from the monk or somebody like that, some gangster, you wouldn't take it naturally, you know.
We now move on to his testimony yesterday on Wednesday, and the crucial allegation by Frank Dunlop was that that Frank Dunlop met with Don Lydon on Friday the 1st and the 4th of May in 1992 in Don Lydon's office. I think this was in St. John of Galls, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Fantastic, isn't it? And that he was asked for a £5,000 bribe. This is Frank Dunlop said that Don Lydon asked him for a £5,000 bribe in connection with the rezoning of land. And in this extract, counsel for the tribunal, John Gallagher, asked Don Lydon to outline why he signed the motion supporting the rezoning of these lands at Paisley Park.
I just want to understand the reason, where and why and in what circumstances you signed the motion for Frank Dunlop. You see, he says that the reason you did it was that you had agreed to accept a bribe of £3,000, having looked for £5,000.
I know he said that, yeah.
That is an extraordinarily serious allegation against a man, particularly somebody like you.
He's made allegations against other people as well.
We will just deal with you at the moment.
He picked out other people who are
We
dead.
will deal with you for the moment. He has made specific, unequivocal allegations against you.
I know that.
The allegation is that you looked for £5,000 in order to sign this motion and you accepted £3,000.
Yes, he says that.
He says that he visited your office on 2 occasions. The first occasion was on the afternoon of Friday, the 1st of May 1992. The second occasion was on the morning of Monday, the 4th of May 1992.
He said he visited my office on 2 occasions when I couldn't have been there. That's about the height of it.
All right. We will talk about that, whether you could have been there or not. When did the meeting in the Royal Marine Hotel commence? What time?
I don't know, about 10 o'clock in the morning, I think.
What time were you scheduled to speak at the meeting?
I always speak at most conferences at that particular slot.
What time did you speak at?
I suppose 5 or 10 past 2 or something like that. I don't know exactly. Usually at 2 o'clock there is a lunch and fellows go to the bar and it's called the dead slot, but I usually, they put me on there because I speak all right and I can entertain them for an hour and that's it. They don't always come in on time. They wander in and so on.
You were scheduled to speak at 14:05, isn't that right?
Well, I think so, yes.
Do you remember being there on that occasion?
Of course.
Why, if you remember being there on that occasion, was it necessary to contact Mr. Healy?
To make sure I had no record of it, no diary. What could I say? Come in here and say I was at a conference in Dunleary. What's the first thing you could say to me? Can you prove it? Lord God, man, I've gone through so much stuff trying to prove where I was, it has me cracked.
Do you recall the luncheon in the Royal Marine in question?
I do, yes.
Who were you sitting beside?
I have no idea. I hardly knew any of the bankers there. It might have been Mr. Healy. There was one other fella I knew. I can't remember his name. They were corporate bankers, treasurers. They went from one conference to another.
Can you recall what was on the menu?
Ah, come on.
Can you recall anything about the lunch that would assist the tribunal informing of you as to whether or not you were...
Mr. Gallagher, you're not seriously asking me to remember what was on the menu.
You simply said you remembered being at the lunch. I asked you who you sat beside, and you couldn't remember. Is there anything about the lunch that you could tell the tribunal that it could attach a significance to?
All the events of those couple of days have been filled in by third parties. That's it. If you ask me what I did the previous day, I don't know. You know, ask me what I did 2 or 3 days' time from it, nobody would know what they did in 1992.
What time did your address at that conference conclude at?
Well, I usually talk for about 45 minutes.
What did you do after that?
I'd sit there for the next speaker, and then we had some questions and a cup of tea or coffee or whatever.
Time. What time is that?
I suppose 3:30, I don't know exactly.
What did you do after that?
I hung around the Marine Hotel. I talked to some people.
Why did you hang around the Marine Hotel?
Because there was a reception at 5:30.
Are you saying you hung around from 3:30 to 5:30 because there was a reception fixed for...
5:30.
No, it wasn't. It was fixed for after the closing address by the President, which was fixed for 5:30.
If I was at a conference, I'd stay at the conference.
Do you remember being there between 3:30 and 5:30?
I can't remember exactly no more than anything else, but I assume I was there. Why wouldn't I?
How long would it take you to drive back from St. John of God's Hospital to the Royal Marine Hotel?
I remember Mr. Healy saying, well, I suppose half an hour would be the most, I'd say. I know from going down to Dunleary, we have council meetings at 5 o'clock on Monday evening. I leave my office at 5 o'clock. I usually get down about 20 to 6 in Dunleary. I'm nearly always late for council meetings. Anybody would tell you could. Half an hour to 40 minutes. Wouldn't be more than that anyway.
I suggest to you that it could be done easily in 15 to 17 minutes.
How much?
15 to 17 minutes.
You could, maybe, on a good day. But this was a Friday afternoon. And you know what traffic is like. I'll tell you something else. Mr. Healy said it was lashing rain. And I got my secretary to check with the Met Office. And there was 3 or 4 inches of rain that afternoon and gale force winds. If you tell me you can do it in 15 to 17 minutes on Friday afternoon, lashing rain, gale force wind, you couldn't do it.
You are telling the tribunal that you would have sat at the conference on the day in question, on the day on which Frank Dunlop says you asked for a bribe of £5,000 and agreed to accept £3,000, and you would have sat doing the crossword all day from...
No, I didn't say I sat at the conference all day. Most of these people, I go to a lot of conferences, and you know as well as I do, a whole lot of lads go into the bar, and I'd be talking to them, having coffee or something. I addressed the Association of Guard Inspectors twice. I addressed all kinds of groups, and they don't sit at the conference. They wander around, intermingle, network, and that's where I'd meet them.
Are you saying to the tribunal that you remained at that conference all day, didn't return to your place of work, which was approximately 20 minutes away?
20 minutes on a good day. I don't know if it was a good day, probably a lot longer, but on a wet Friday afternoon, it's a lot more than that.
It is less than 5 miles between your place of work?
I'd say it's between 4 and 6. Wouldn't be less than 4 or more than 6, about 5 miles away.
You are saying...
I can't ask you questions. I was wondering, did you send somebody out to measure? Or is that a rumour?
You cannot ask questions. The position is, in relation to that signing, you can't remember anything about it effectively.
About the conference?
Isn't that right?
No, sure, what?
Well now, Mr. Dunlop has said that on the 4th of May 1992, he returned by arrangement to your office in St. John of God's, and he met you, and he has a diary entry confirming that he had a meeting with you at 9:30 on Monday morning.
Whatever about putting one in for a Friday, I can't possibly accept that one on Monday. I've never in all my life made an appointment for somebody in the hospital on Monday. Nobody ever does. I've asked. Psychiatrists don't do it, social workers. It just doesn't happen on a Monday morning.
In this next extract, counsel for the tribunal, John Gallagher, continues to press Don Lydon about the alleged £5,000 bribe and the written record of the meetings in Frank Dunlop's diaries. This is the written record of meetings in St. John of God's on the 1st and the 4th of May in 1992.
You accept that Frank Dunlop's diary is accurate in respect of some of the meetings he had with you in St. John of God's Hospital?
Yeah.
Can you give the tribunal any explanation as to why his entries in respect of the 1st of May 1992 and the 4th of May 1992 are not accurate?
No. I can't surmise, but I don't know. You see, not all his diaries, as I mentioned umpteen times. He has many entries in his diary that are not accurate at all. I can quote them if you want me to. Not to do with me, but to do with Mr. Caldwell and other people. You're placing an awful lot of stress on diary entries, but they are not accurate, as you know. I'm sure if I look at your diary entry, I'm sure you would find something in it that you didn't do.
The question I did put to you was whether you can give any explanation as to why the entries in Mr. Dunlop's diary for the 1st of May and 4th of May would be inaccurate, given that you accept that other entries for other dates are accurate.
My only explanation I could possibly offer you, and this is only off the top of my head, maybe I gave an appointment for 3:30 on Friday. Was that the time? And then I told him afterwards I was at a conference, and he said, I better give you a ring some other time. I don't know. It's 12 years ago. I don't know. I didn't know I was in the hospital until other people confirmed to me. Now I know I wasn't. I know I didn't meet him. Why did he put the entries in his diary? God only knows.
Are you saying that Frank Dunlop lied to this tribunal when he said that he gave you a bribe of £3,000?
I have never said to anybody that Frank Dunlop lied about anything. Never.
Frank Dunlop has told this tribunal that he paid you £3,000 in cash.
That's right. That's what he believes. That's what he alleges.
That is what he has sworn to.
Yes.
That's his sworn evidence.
It's my sworn evidence that he didn't.
Well now, either Frank Dunlop is correct in what he swears, or he is not correct. Isn't that right?
Yes. That doesn't mean he's lying. He may believe that. And I never called him a liar, and I never will, because I don't know if he believes what he's saying or not.
You say that if he says he paid you £3,000, he is wrong in that belief. Effectively, he is mistaken. He is hallucinating.
He is not hallucinating.
How could anybody be mistaken whether he paid a bribe for £3,000?
Maybe it suits him.
If he is doing it for the reason it suits him to say so, he is lying, and he is not telling the truth to this tribunal.
I don't want to go down that line. That's not strictly accurate. You see, I deal with cases of sexual abuse a lot, and in that case...
I don't want to know
It's important that you hear me. This may explain his reasoning. What happens in those cases is that a person creates a scenario, and they fit the memories in to fit. Our personalities are defined by our memories. And you know that Mr. Dunlop is a very narcissistic man, and he may not be able to tolerate the effect that he was caught out, and he may have created a scenario and constructed memories like somebody does in the case of sexual abuse. And the memories then came to be believed. I just say this. It is one possible explanation. I'm not offering this. It's just an opinion on what you asked me. I don't know why Mr. Dunlop has done it, or did it, sorry. I don't care why he did it, and I'm not calling him a liar.
Clearly the allegation is damaging, and extremely damaging from your point of view.
It's appalling. Sure, after that, I know forever and a day, if I go into a room with 100 people, 10 or 15 people will never believe me. And 10 or 15 would believe me if I shot their mother. And I'm fighting here for the people, my reputation and my wife, and I've been... When those things appeared in the newspaper, the Sunday Independent, it was shocking. Shocking.
I can well understand that, and I'm sure the tribunal appreciates just how traumatic it must have been for you and everybody else.
You have no idea. I had to face patients the next day, and I'm sitting on television.
Today, Don Lydon's testimony, today, the third day of Don Lydon's testimony, he was questioned by John Gallagher about a 1993 meeting of Dublin County Council where Trevor Sargent of the Green Party had to be escorted from the council chamber after producing a cheque from a property developer.
Do you remember a meeting in 1993 on the 19th of February in 1993? That was a meeting at which Trevor Sargent produced a cheque.
I do. I'll never forget that.
Would you tell the tribunal what you recall of that meeting? What was said and the context in which it was said?
Well, it's a bit embarrassing. He produced a cheque and he waved it around and said, this is from a developer or something. I don't know the words, he said, you see. And he wouldn't show it or tell us who it was from. So I tried to grab it out of his hand and I couldn't get it off him. I shouldn't have done it, but I apologised to him later, and we're probably the best of friends now. And in fact, he's always invited me to his prayer meetings.
Well, was there much of an outcry at that time?
Oh, not at all, no. It was more a bit of crack than anything else.
Well, did he produce the cheque, which he, as a member of the Green Party, said he had received from a developer or developer's agent?
Yes. He wouldn't tell us who it was from.
Yes.
I think after... No, sorry, go on.
Was he challenged about that?
Was he challenged?
Was he challenged as to having received a cheque from a developer or developer's agent?
He was. I think somebody asked him who it was from. Tell us. He wouldn't show it, so I tried to grab it off him.
This is in the chamber of the council?
Yeah. It's very embarrassing. When you look back on it, that's what happened.
Would you concede that there was an uproar at that time?
Oh, yeah. Chaos.
And was this done in the context of earlier motions to rezone part of the Carrickmines Valley?
No, much simpler. He just got a cheque from somebody. He more or less said, here's a cheque sent to me by a developer. That's, I think, all he said, probably implying it was an inducement. I tried to get it off him. I I didn't succeed anyway, and that's... that was it.
Was he grabbed around the neck by you?
Well, I think the report is slightly exaggerated. Some papers I got him in a necklock. It wasn't like that at all. I grabbed him from behind and tried to pull the cheque out of his hand.
When you say from behind, how did you...
Probably caught him by the shoulder or something. I don't know.
Why were you so concerned to get the cheque?
I wasn't, just I suppose pure devilment. The fact he didn't show it, I wanted to see it. It wouldn't be a characteristic gesture of mine.
You were circulated with a number of documents that the Tribunal asked you to comment on. Amongst those was a transcript of the Marketplace programme transmitted on the 21st of April 1993. And in that programme, Deputy Sergeant said as follows, and I quote, "I was grabbed from behind, as was seen from the press gallery. I was jostled. Attempts were made to snatch the cheque from my hand, and finally, for my own safety, I was escorted out of the chamber by the manager, who I am grateful for that piece of protection. It was the most bizarre reaction I ever got to quite a simple question. The question he asked, you and your other colleagues in the chamber, was as follows. Quote, has anybody else received a cheque such as the one I have received? And if that was somehow a difficult question for people to answer, just even the question, I wonder why. That was his contribution to the Marketplace programme. Porrick Yates, whom you might know, a well-known journalist.
Who?
Former journalist. Porrick Yates was a well-known journalist with the Irish Times who covered many meetings of the Dublin County Council.
I didn't know. I've never heard of him.
He was interviewed and said as follows, quote, the reaction from the councillors was almost manic. There was a bit of a melee and people were roaring and screaming at Sargent. But I think it did open a can of worms or hornet's nest or whatever. And I think it does beg the question if it was worth the while of a small developer to pay £100 to the Green Party, who are notorious for their opposition to rezoning. Are there other developers offering larger inducements to other people in order to look favourably at their applications?
That's good copy.
Do you think that those two accounts accurately reflect what happened at the meeting on the occasion in question?
I think they're a little exaggerated, to be honest with you, but more or less accurate, yeah.
More or less. Mr. Sargent appears to have been escorted from the council chamber by the manager for his own protection.
I don't remember. I think that's exaggerated.
Is it true the meeting had to be adjourned?
I think so, yeah.
And what was it about the question that he asked? And I will repeat it for you. Quote, has anyone else received a cheque such as the one I have received?
Because he wasn't shown to us.
What concerned you about why he wouldn't show it to you?
I don't know. I really don't.
What agitated you so much that you had to see who was the person who gave the cheque?
I honestly don't know.
I mean, I don't understand the laughter, quite frankly.
I'm looking back on it. Such a stupid thing. I just have to laugh, but I've no idea. As you say, it was a stupid thing to do, and I apologised to him afterwards.
Well, Senator Lydon, can you explain why you were so incensed at Mr. Sargent producing a cheque for £100 from a developer when you had taken thousands of pounds previously when you had taken thousands of pounds in the previous 12 months or so from developers?
I wasn't really incensed, only incensed that he wouldn't show it to us, not the cheque.
Well, were you not incensed by his suggestion that councillors were being paid by developers?
I don't think so. I don't remember that. My motivation at the time was that he wouldn't show it. I was trying to get it out of his hands to see who it was from, that's all. I think a lot of the councillors, at least I don't want to speculate, some thought he just produced the thing and maybe he didn't get it at all. I don't know.
But it wasn't a feeling on your part that this was an insult to other councillors?
Oh, not at all. No. You see, it hyped these things up at a meeting. It's like when somebody says something at a meeting and they hop on them and they attack one another because it's plain politics rather than real life.
But you didn't think it was appropriate at the time to announce that you had received many thousands of pounds from developers yourself?
In a meeting?
Yes.
No.
There would have been a riot.
I don't think there would have been a riot. The only question was, who gave it to him? Not that he got it. That's the way I saw it.
The reconstruction was done first by Joe Taylor and Kevin Reynolds, and the person who intervened there at the end was Judge Mahan, one of the new judges on the Flood Tribunal. And we have with us Brian Downing of the Irish Independent for Keane of RTE, and Vivian Traynor also of RTE. Vivian, you spend your time down there at the Flood Tribunal. What a lucky assignment. It must be hilarious, is it?
It's actually funnier when you hear the reenactments back. Sometimes you can't believe some of the stuff that you've sat through during the day. But it's a really accurate reflection of what goes on down there. It is like the Twilight Zone sometimes, the things you have to listen to and the explanations discussing the menus at conferences and stuff like that. He's quite a colourful witness. John Lydon has provided some very entertaining days over the past 3 days, and has in fact been quite a strong witness when compared to some of the other councillors that have gone before him. He is actually very strong in his defence and quite honest in a way about how councillors operated. It has been one of the most honest testimonies we've had about how local politics operates, and what's coming through as well is what would have to be said in fairness is that the lack of checking that goes on by these councillors when they're going to propose a motion. Don Lydon is one of the few people who said he would actually go up and have a look at a piece of land before he would rezone it, but quite pointedly he said today that he was going to propose the rezoning of this land in Carrick Mines to produce industry and jobs for the area. This has been repeated as a mantra all the time, and when challenged on it he was said, well, did you know who was behind the land? He was shown a piece of paper by Frank Dunlop with directors who were based in England, overseas directors, names that meant nothing to him. And when he asked, did you know anything about their track record? No, he didn't. Did he check in any way who these people were? How did he know that they could provide jobs in the area? His simple answer was that Frank Dunlop told him so. He did no further checking, and yet was prepared to propose this motion. And this is a feature that's emerging about how the whole thing operated in the early 90s. Some would say it has improved somewhat because facilities have improved somewhat, but he's giving us a whole picture of how these people operated in those days.
Fergal Keane, it's hilarious stuff. But the fellow coming down and opening the door, and he was naked except for a towel, and then giving him £500. He never saw the guy before in his life.
Yeah, he's a very colourful witness, and it was very entertaining. But he did make what I thought was the most extraordinary statement I've heard in this whole thing so far. It's been going on for 6 years, and today he was asked, look, was there corruption in the planning process, Dublin County Council? And he said no, he didn't believe there was any corruption in Dublin planning. So there we've been there now for 6 years, spent millions of pounds, had probably the biggest investigation this country has ever seen into anything, and it's all been a mistake, according to Don Lydon.
The story about the putting Trevor Sargent in a necklock. Really amazing.
Yeah, but it is. But like Vincent, I think this guy is encouraging people to laugh at this, and he's laughing on it, saying, "Look, we're here. It's all just a bit of a laugh. It's a joke." But in fact, that was one of the most notorious things that ever happened in Dublin County Council, the most notorious public body which ever existed in this country since 1922, probably. And this guy is just laughing.
And he now goes to prayer meetings, or gets invited to prayer meetings run by
the same misfortunate Trevor Sargent.
What are these prayer meetings?
I think these prayer meetings, if I remember correctly, Vincent, I think these prayer meetings go back to something in the last Dáil, or maybe even the one before that, when a group of people now, certainly Trevor Sargent and Sean Doherty were certainly